Hello, and thank you for listening to this episode of the Moore's October Rants. Today's episode is titled, No One is Born Evil. This topic's been on my mind for a while, and I think it's something a lot of people can relate to. So, let me start by telling you a story from about 6 or 7 years ago, back when I was in my first serious relationship. You know how it goes. When you're young, you think you know everything, but you really don't have a clue. At the time, I didn't fully understand what a healthy relationship should look like. I didn't know the boundaries I should have set, the standards I should have held myself to. It was all just a mess of emotions, and I was caught up in it. Man, it was one of those on-again, off-again relationships. Every time I thought it was over, I found myself getting pulled back in. And looking back, it's embarrassing how many second chances I gave. I didn't know any better. When someone disrespects you, cheats on you, or doesn't value you, giving them a second chance isn't a sign of kindness. It's a sign that you're not valuing yourself enough. But when you're in it, you can't see that. You're too attached, too emotionally invested. And that's exactly where I was. I was young, and I let my emotions run the show. I was so wrapped up in my feelings that I couldn't make logical decisions. I couldn't step back and see things clearly because I was drowning in all the emotions. Looking back now, with more maturity, I can see that what I was feeling wasn't love. It was attachment. And that's a dangerous thing to mistake for love, because attachment can make you do some dumb things. After the breakup, I went through what a lot of people do when they've been cheated on. I was angry. I hated everything. I was in that mindset where it's easy to start blaming everyone, hating on women, saying things like all women are this or all men are that. It's a natural reaction, but it's a shallow one. It's like covering up a wound with a Band-Aid, when what you really need to do is clean the cut and let it heal properly. Here's where the real thinking comes in. When you start to pull back from that emotional response, when you start to actually process what happened, you realize there's a lot more going on. People don't just cheat or hurt others for no reason. It's not always about you. Sometimes it's about them. About what they're dealing with, or more likely, what they haven't dealt with. And that's where we get into this idea of evil. Why do people do bad things? Why do people cheat, lie, steal, and hurt others? It's easy to say that person is evil, or they're just a bad person, but I don't believe anyone is born evil. I think people are shaped by their experiences, by what they've seen, and by what they've learned growing up. When you take a deeper dive into why people do the things they do, you often find that it comes from a place of hurt, dissatisfaction, or some deep emotional void that hasn't been filled. Let's talk about cheating for a second. Why do people cheat? It's usually not because they're evil or just out to hurt someone. Most of the time, cheating comes from some level of dissatisfaction, whether it's with themselves, with their relationship, or with life in general. They think they can find something better, that the grass is greener on the other side. But here's the kicker. Most of the time, the problem isn't the relationship. It's them. They haven't figured out how to deal with their own darkness, their own issues, so they act out in destructive ways. For those of you who believe in God or a higher power, this brings up a question I've heard a lot. Why does God allow evil in the world? And for those who don't believe in God, the question might be more like, why do humans do evil things? These are big questions, but I think the answer, at least part of it, lies in understanding human nature. Here's what I believe. God didn't create evil. Evil comes from us. It's part of our human nature. God gave us free will, which means we have the power to make choices. And sometimes those choices are bad. Sometimes people make choices that hurt others, but God didn't make them do it. People blame God because it's easier than holding themselves accountable. But the truth is, we have to own up to our actions. Humans learn by observing. When we're born, we don't know how to hate or hurt anyone. Babies don't come into this world racist or selfish or with the desire to hurt people. That stuff is learned. We pick it up from the people around us, from our environment, from what we see growing up. So when you look at someone who's doing something bad, chances are they've been influenced by something they saw or experienced. Now, for those of you who don't believe in a higher power, I'm sure you can still relate to this idea. From a scientific standpoint, humans have something called mirror neurons. We mimic what we see. That's why kids often grow up to be like their parents, even when they swore they wouldn't. We absorb everything, whether it's from our parents, our friends, or the media, and that shapes who we become. But here's the key thing. Just because we've observed bad behavior doesn't mean we have to repeat it. Let's bring it back to the idea of evil. When people act out, when they cheat, lie, steal, or hurt others, it's often because they haven't dealt with their own issues. They haven't taken the time to reflect on their trauma or break the cycle of negativity they've been exposed to. They're acting on emotion instead of logic, and that's a big part of where evil comes from, emotional reactions. Back when I got cheated on, I was acting out of emotion too. I was mad, hurt, and instead of walking away, I kept coming back because I was still attached. It wasn't logical. It was all emotion. And when you're acting out of emotion, you're not thinking clearly. You're just reacting, and those reactions are often destructive. When we stop reacting emotionally and start thinking logically, that's when things start to change. We stop blaming other people for our problems. We stop saying, "Oh, this happened to me, so now I'm justified in doing this." No, you're not. We have to take responsibility for our actions, no matter what we've been through. A lot of you are probably holding on to anger right now. Anger toward your parents, your ex, your friends, whoever. And I get it, I've been there. But you've got to let that go, man. Holding on to that anger is only hurting you. It's not doing anything to the person who hurt you. In fact, they've probably moved on and aren't even thinking about you anymore. So why are you letting it control you? Here's a perfect analogy. In Avengers: Infinity War, there's a scene where the Hulk fights Thanos. Now, Hulk is all rage, right? He's fueled by anger and aggression. And for a while, that works for him. But when he goes up against Thanos, who's calm, collected, and strategic, he gets his ass handed to him. That's exactly what happens when emotion goes up against logic. Logic will win every time. We live in a world right now where it's easy to act out emotionally. The economy sucks, the dating market is trash, and people are angry all the time. But if we let those emotions control us, we're just feeding into the same cycle of negativity. We have to learn how to let go of the past, let go of the things that hurt us, and start thinking logically about how we want to move forward. At the end of the day, when someone hurts you, whether they cheat, lie, or do something cruel, it's because they haven't grown enough to break free from the negativity they've been exposed to. They're still stuck in that emotional space, and they're using it as an excuse for their actions. But once you recognize that, you can stop letting their actions affect you. You can move forward with a clear head, knowing that their behavior is a reflection of them, not you. So, thank you for listening to this episode of the Moore's October Rants. I hope this gave you something to think about. Until next time, signing out. Have a good one. Goodbye.